Welcome to another video from XF Motorsports, and this one's going to be about, well, pretty much all of the 2022 racing season. Apologize I didn't post a video on the channel for a while. Last year was a pretty busy year, but quite a lot has happened since you guys saw this car last time on the channel. It might even look a lot different with all the wings and side skirts and even a front wing added to it. So quite a lot of air changes that we made this time. We also tried running quite a lot more power this time. We ran the engine all the way up to 800 wheel horsepower, which, well, for the first half ran pretty well, but after that it did come with its fair share of problems. We melted a piston, we fried the ignition coil drivers, literally 2 days away from the CSCS round 5, but we were able to take everything apart, fix everything, and get the car ready for that event, which actually went fairly well. The car actually did the fastest rear wheel drive time on that event, which is really commendable considering the amount of problems it was running with on that event. So performance-wise, yes, it's quite a lot faster than what it was before. And well, also at the end of the video, I'll talk about what's to come next after this project. We're already pretty much gonna start building the successor to this car fairly soon, which is a much cooler car than this one, mid-engined, and well, I'll just talk about everything at the end of this video. And also talking about plans for the future. You might see the shop is pretty empty right now, and we're moving a few things. We're actually moving to a bigger place. And hopefully by the end of this video, I will show you guys a new place. It's quite a lot bigger than this one, and there's a whole lot I plan to do over there. So yeah, really exciting stuff. Let's get into it and show you guys how everything went. So in the previous video, you might have seen the car on the previous aero setup. We just had one fixed carbon fiber rear wing at the back. But since then we were working on this new design, like of a 3-element wing that all 3 elements close and they become a single element when the car is going down the straights, so there's really little drag. But then in the corners the wing opens up and it becomes a massive 3-element wing with slot gaps and everything. And well, the CFD results were really good behind it, and it was supposed to make a lot of downforce, so we were really excited to test it out on the track. I'll probably make a separate designated video for this wing once they're fully complete and ready for sale, but right now we didn't get to that part yet. We also added a matching wing to the front of the car. This was just because the existing bodywork at the front of the car would not have been able to match the downforce from the rear wing. So yeah, as a last minute decision, we just added another wing to the front of the car as well. And this way it made it really easy to manage the front to rear downforce ratio. The first time we tested these wings was on the Speed Fun track day, and it was a bit of a rushed setup. We just put the wings on overnight and showed up over there for the track day. So that's why there were no end plates, and the angles and stuff were not set up. But after a few changes with wing angles, the results were actually pretty amazing. Previously the car used to hit about 1.70 through the corners, but this time we were able to see as high as 2G through the corners. This track day the car was a little down on power. We later realized that 2 of the ignition coils had burnt out. That's why the car was not going that fast down the straights, but nonetheless the advantage from the cornering alone was so much that the car was still able to beat its previous lap time by over a second. So 2 days after the Speed Fun track day, it was time for CSCS round 2, and we were back with the car with the ignition coils fixed this time. So the car was making its previous level of full power, which was 550 wheel horsepower, and it was just flying down the track. The first qualifying, we had already set the fastest time at that time, but we still hadn't even started pushing the car yet because we were just adjusting the wing angles at this time. We weren't using DRS just to get a better idea of the air balance, but What I didn't realize was that now we had fixed wings going all the way down the straight, and we were carrying extra speed down the straight because of the extra power. So of course that meant that the wing supports and everything were under much more aerodynamic load than what they were 2 days ago. These were the same supports and everything taken from the previous carbon fiber wings that we were running. I relied on my luck a bit too much, thinking that they would be okay with this wing setup as well. But soon after, of course, the inevitable happened. Okay, so a bit of a bad ending to that day. It's went out there for the second session. The car, well, was pretty quick. It did a 1:13.3. It was the second quickest lap. At that time, the only car quicker was the Civic out there. But after that, the wing completely ripped off the welds on the supports. I guess it was a little too big to take the chance with this one. It just ripped the tube completely off from here, and it just broke right off. It was crazy. And luckily, thankfully, it didn't fall off on the track, because I would have been in a lot of trouble then. But I still got in a lot of trouble because I didn't realize that it was broken up until half a lap later, and yeah, the guys were really mad at me for that. Yeah, the damage is really bad actually. The bolts on the mechanism broke right off, probably because of the whole thing going sideways. This mechanism is obviously completely broken. You can see it's all bent from here. That also obviously happened because like the whole wing broke down completely, so a bit of an expensive repair this one is gonna be, but yeah, that's crazy. I was almost thinking of going for another hot lap, pushing it a little more, getting a bit more lap time out of it, and that's when the wing broke, of course. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but that's okay. Hopefully next time we're going to be back with DRS working and everything, so I think it's going to go pretty fast. If this was with fixed wings, it did a 1:13.3 with DRS and everything else. I think it should be quite a bit quicker. So after that, we went back and made stronger wing supports. This time I did do the job properly, doing proper FEA analysis, making sure how strong we needed the wing supports to be. While I was at it, I also added this lower wing at the back, just to balance the car better again, because now with the front wing mounted, we were making a little more front downforce. The next time we went out, we also did some experiments with calculating exactly how much downforce we were making. So I calibrated the rear suspension just by putting weights on it and seeing how much weight it would actually take to bottom out the suspension completely. And on the track, by running a camera and a sensor at the back, we were able to work out that right around 160 kilometers per hour, the rear suspension bottoms out completely. The front suspension was also almost bottoming out around the same point. So the car was pretty much, yeah, making balanced downforce front to rear, and making about 800 kilograms total downforce at 160 kilometers per hour. The other change we made this time was trying to run more power. I was trying that for quite a while, but every time I would try to run more power, I would run into problems. And this time I really wanted to work on the tune to get the car working on, well, first 700 dual horsepower, which was what we were trying for at that event, and then slowly taking it up from there. But when we showed up for the next time attack, it was the most horrible day to test more power on, because yeah, all through the morning it was raining and it was the worst track conditions really. Later on in the day though, the rain did stop, and through the later qualifying sessions, the track was slowly starting to dry up. Conditions were still really tricky because parts of the track were wet and other parts were dry, but luckily going down the straights, pretty much the whole straight was dry, so I could run the power down the straights and test if everything was running okay. But we were still having quite a lot of issues. So two of the tuning issues that we were having was one was with the boost controller. The boost controller, I think at that time we were trying to regulate the boost around 19 psi. But what would happen was that on the dyno things were okay, everything would stay stable, but on the actual track, the boost would keep creeping up and it would eventually hit the boost cut, and then yeah, the car would just cut power completely. Later we realized that this problem was because of the turbos getting hot, and when the turbos would get hot, they would become more efficient, they would start making more boost. And the boost controller, even though it has feedback and that's its whole purpose to like take the feedback and lower the boost, it just wasn't good enough to do the job properly. The other problem it was having was that our spark was still not powerful enough to ignite the air-fuel mixture properly at a certain boost level. So basically, after hitting a certain boost level, it just would not ignite the air-fuel mixture properly. So you would hear the car like sputtering down the straight, and it would also lose power when it would do that. So that's why, yeah, on this track day we didn't get the best lap time. I could have gone back and put the older tune back in, but I really wanted to go forwards with this one and try to figure all the tuning issues so that we could run more power. The rest of the event was pretty, I guess, uneventful because there was no other cars in exhibition, so I won exhibition by default. The final lap time was 1 minute 14, which was well, a little bit slower than what the car had done previously, just because the tune was not set.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, here we are in the winner's circle.
After this event, we were thinking of putting the car's bodywork on, all the fenders, rear fenders, trunk lid, lights, everything, and wrapping the car in its final colors, basically making it look like the initial renders, like the way the car was supposed to look like. But the problem was there were still like problems in the car, the tuning issues, and even the aero wasn't complete fully, so we decided to put our efforts into fixing the car first. So this time, yeah, we mainly put our effort into getting the tune working, which we were mainly able to fix except for the boost controller. And after that we worked on the aero, making these really cool end plates for the rear wing. They're not big enough so that they look too obvious. They're basically meant to look good when the wing is closed, but aerodynamically this still had a really significant effect of reducing the wing tip vortex. We also made front wing end plates for the front wing, and we also added side skirts and also made some changes with the car's brake angle. So 2 days before the CSCS, we're here on another track day. Really hoping things work out this time, because we've spent a lot of effort on the car, mostly on the electronics. This time I'm taking a laptop on board. I've taken the other seat out just so that I can actually see all the values, what's going on the actual track, make changes, and yeah, just work on the tune really, because that's been such a big problem over the last few track days. The car wasn't even making its full power, so we're really hoping that this time we get that sorted, and then also work on the aero. If that gets sorted in time, then work on the aero and get it ready for the CSCS. As soon as I got in the car and put my foot down, I was the happiest person in the world. There was just smooth power going all the way down the street, and the car was crazy fast, way faster than it's ever been before. It was literally the second lap, I think, and I wasn't even pushing it that much, and I easily managed a 1 minute 11. Then, literally 4 laps into the day, this happens.
So it might be a head gasket too?
No.
So how's the track day going, man? You might have a up piston ring, eh? That's what happens when you want to be the fastest, man. CSCS round 5 is in 2 days.
Yes.
We're gonna fix the issue by then.
Yeah.
Hopefully we do.
After that, I had to work at the quickest pace ever, trying to take the engine apart and yeah, replacing the piston in time. Luckily, we had all the spare parts for disassembling the engine and putting it back together. Here's a look at the piston after the head is off, and yeah, really weirdly it's melted a whole like slot over here, and like goes all the way through the piston. Super weird. No sign of knock on any of the other cylinders as well, just like this one's melted. The cylinder wall is scratched up a little bit, but I don't think it's too bad. I think maybe just honing it a little bit, I might be able to get away with it. If it was a street engine, I would care more, but this is just a racing engine, so I don't think it's going to be worth replacing the block for this little bit of damage. But other than that, yeah, everything else luckily inside the engine looks good. Seems like this was the only melted piston, but I do need to look into why it happened and definitely make sure that this doesn't happen again. So after this, it was just a matter of machining another piston in the same shape as the older one and putting it back in the engine, just so that it would match with all the other pistons. So these were stock M113 pistons, but they were machined from the top to lower the compression ratio. I was running 8.5 to 1 compression rather than the stock 9 to 1. The compression was actually really helpful because that was one of the reasons that enabled us to run such high boost levels without any problems. We were running the car at 22 psi when it was making 800 wheel horsepower, but the problem, the melted piston, was actually caused by an overboost, which I later looked in the telemetry. The boost had peaked all the way to 26 psi, and at that point it had exceeded the limit of our fuel injectors. So the fuel injectors had maxed out at 95% duty cycle, but there was still more air going in because of the overboost, and that rose temperatures to the point where the piston melted, just because of the combination of high boost and lean air fuel mixtures. Once everything was back together, we headed out for another track day just to make sure everything would be 100% good this time. I turned down the boost a little bit just to be safe this time, so there weren't any other overboosts. And this time everything was still running perfect. The car was still making amazing power going down the straights, so that was just like the best feeling for the first 2 seconds. But then, later in the day, this happens. So long story short, after that the ignition coil drivers had burnt. We were running them a little bit harder to get a more powerful spark out of them because we were having spark issues earlier with the tune. Luckily I did have these Nissan or Mitsubishi coil drivers lying around, which weren't a perfect fit for this, but I was able to rewire things somewhat to make these work. And then the next day I showed up at the CSCS with 0 hours of sleep, barely putting everything back together, and the news still got worse because I went out there for the first qualifying. Literally the first lap I did, the car dies going down the main straight. Luckily I did get the car moving again and I was able to limp it back to the pits, but things were not looking good. Quite a few of the electronics were not working. There were some 5-volt supplies for sensors that were not going to those sensors, and yeah, it was just looking horrible. So after that I kept struggling through the full day trying to rewire the electronics, somehow coming with a solution to get things working. I used like a USB power supply from a laptop to give 5 volts to some of the sensors that weren't getting voltage, but I had to rewrite the tune and I had to take out the boost controller and quite a few other things at that point to get things running basically, because I just wanted to make the car run at that point, no matter if it was making full power or not. And well, just to show you how last minute I ran with these changes, I was waiting in the lineup for Q5, the last qualifying, and I was still making changes with the electronics, putting all the wires back together.
What is this, man?
The traffic in Q5 was pretty bad, but towards the end I was able to bully my way through the traffic and find one good lap right at the end, the last lap of the session, and I was able to set a 1 minute 13, which at that time I was super happy with that lap time. Well, driving the car previously at 800 wheel horsepower and now driving it back on wastegate pressure, which was probably around 500 wheel horsepower, it felt super slow. I thought it would be like a really slow lap time, but getting a 1 minute 13, I was pretty happy at that time, knowing that there was still somewhat of a chance of putting a good result together. Before the final time attack, I did have a little bit of time, so I went around to record some of the competitor cars. This was an 850 wheel horsepower Subaru WRX built by Kanjai Motorsports, being driven by Bevan Gray. The bodywork on this car was just insane. Most of the original body was cut away, replaced by carbon fiber bodywork, fully wind tunnel tested. The chassis was mostly tube steel reinforced. Most of the suspension was custom, even custom spindles actually. So yeah, just insane amount of work that went into this car, and was really cool actually seeing it out on track. This was a McLaren 765 LT by MTech Auto. It was one of two 765 LTs that showed up on this event. This was a little bit quicker than the other one, probably just because it was being driven by a professional touring car driver. Just running Hoosiers, the same tires that I am running, but of course running quite a lot more power than my car. Overall lap times are a little bit faster than my car right now, but I believe in the finals I might be able to catch up to it, judging by how my car does. Let's see how it works out. But nonetheless, a really cool car. It's not often that you see a McLaren running slick tires, tuned to 800 wheel horsepower, showing up on time attacks, so that's really cool. There's a freaking jet car over here. I was talking to the person earlier, and actually this car, it's a drag racing car. It has an actual jet engine in it with an afterburner and everything from an older fighter jet, but super cool. I really love seeing jet engines, but this is well, seeing it in a car, it's even cooler. That up front is the compressor stages. That's the combustion chamber. These are the turbine wheels that spin using the compression, and then this is a little bit of an afterburner that throws up some massive flames out of the back. So I'm really excited to see this one. Hope I get to see it running, but yeah, let's see. This is the winning Evo. It was a lap time 1 minute 9. Just look at the air on it. It's insane. I've never seen a dive plane this big. It's literally the length of like half the front of the car. Making a lot of power too. I believe it's close to 1,000 horsepower. Look at the massive cooling at the front. Ooh, this is actually the YD Motorsports 765 LT. This is the other one that is competing with the other MTech Auto 765 LT that you guys saw. Both YD Motorsports and MTech Auto, they're the two bigger tuners around here that tune these cars. And they're competing against each other. So I believe they're both on probably similar tunes, both running Hoosier tires, Hoosier A7 I believe. I think they posted on their Instagram that it was making around 800 something wheel horsepower. I'll post it on the screen. But it's really quick. I saw it going down the streets. It's super quick down the streets. This is a car I forgot to record last time. It's I believe from Quebec or Montreal. It's a 300 ZX. Fiber work and stuff. And it's really light. I forgot the exact weight number, but I think it was somewhere around the weight of my car. So really light. Again, Hoosier tires, Hoosier E7s. See the suspension over there, all custom control arms. Seems like a tube chassis if I'm not mistaken, or somewhat of a tube chassis, partly tube chassis. So what they do is they try to cut away as much of the original unwanted chassis to cut down on the weight, and then they add the roll cage and all the tube things to make it rigid and strong enough. Sequential transmission, of course. Here's my only competitor today, a Radical SR3. Another car that's an exhibition, SR3 RSX or something it's called. Has a little Suzuki Hayabusa engine in it, but really light. Only weighs I think 500 kilograms. This is the Lamborghini Gallardo Super Trofeo. You might have seen this on the channel before, like on the track. I think previously it was colored blue. This time it's a different wrap on it or a different paint, I'm not sure. But a really cool car. This one is actually like all factory. It's a Lamborghini Super Trofeo. That's their race car that they use for their challenge, where like all Lamborghini Super Trofeos run just one seat. But I believe, I guess you can mount an extra seat, but I'm not sure if they ever come with a second seat over there. Brembo brakes up front, Pirelli DH slick tires, the tires I don't like too much, but again, for these GT3 cars they work really well because the cars are a little bit heavier, so that's why they work okay. Really cool air on it, front splitter, and I guess we won't be able to see too much underneath because the car's pretty low, but really cool. It's by Mariucci Auto. That's a car dealership over here, where you can see the transmission exposed over there from the back. This is a V10. I think the power on these is 500 or 600, somewhere around there. I'll post it on the screen. After that, it was time for the final time attack. They give you 3 hot laps to set your best lap, and your best lap time is the one that counts as your final result. For my first lap, I caught up to the cars in front a little too soon in the corners, so for the second lap I built a bit of a gap, and then for the third lap I was really able to go for it and set my best lap. That final lap, my car managed a 1 minute 12.021, so really close to the 1 minute 11th. And I think with the amount of problems it was running with, that was an incredible lap time. It was only on, I believe, around 500 wheel horsepower, since it was just running wastegate pressure, which is around like 8 or 9 psi. The front tie rods, you might have noticed, the steering wheel was pretty off going down the straights. That was because we were running these Mazda Miata tie rod ends, and they really weren't strong enough for the job, and they were slowly coming loose. But with all the other problems that we had, I didn't even get time to get to that one. But the front alignment was completely off at the final time the car went out. The DRS also, we weren't using it because with all the electronic issues, I just didn't have time to hook everything back up.
Once again, our 2022 season finale winners. Please make some noise for Chase Pelletier and Chassier. Oh, you go for it, guys. That's what you guys stood. There you go. It's not the camera, not the camera.
Also going over some of the other results, the first place was the black Honda Civic from Daddy Racing. It did a lap time of 1 minute 9.7, incredibly quick lap time. They've been slowly improving this car over the years. I think last year it was doing a 1 minute 11. This year I believe it was running more power. It was running 700 something wheel horsepower, and on this event they actually broke a front axle in qualifying. But they were able to replace the front axle, put everything back together, and get the car out there again and set the fastest lap time of the day, so that was pretty incredible. Second place was the black Subaru STI that you guys saw from CanJam Motorsports. They had a lap time of 1 minute 10.3. Third place overall was the black Evo from YD Motorsports with all the crazy aero work and stuff. Fourth place was my car, and then fifth place was the gray McLaren 765 LT from MTech Auto. And then sixth place overall was the black 300 ZX. So that was everything for the 2022 racing season. The car did, well, fairly good or fairly bad, judging by which way you look at it. It was fairly good considering it was only running 500 wheel horsepower, and we still got it within like 0.5 seconds of its best ever lap time, which was done on 800 wheel horsepower. But that also means that it could have gone a lot faster if we had gotten it running properly on its full power level. But that's okay, because hopefully next year or so, if we do get all these little electronic issues figured, we should be able to get more lap time out of it. But before next year, there are going to be quite a lot of changes to the business and stuff. Like I mentioned, we are moving to a new property. The move to the new property has been quite a lot more difficult than I expected. Well, first of all, showing you guys a new property. I'm not over there yet. This is just a little home office that I built for myself, just so that I could do some computer work while we were in between moving. But this is the new place. It's a massive 50-acre property. The place is absolutely massive. The front is, I think, 970 feet. The property has 2 shops built on it. One shop is in really bad condition and needs to be renovated and stuff before we can even start using it. The other one is fairly usable. It just needs a little bit of work. We need to clean up the shop, paint the floors, install the lifts and stuff, of course. There's also an old house built on it, which I don't have too much use for, so most likely I will just renovate it and rent it out, because I do have use for money at this time, because the property does need quite a lot of construction and quite a lot of work, which we realized the hard way. So the first time I actually drove there to the property, my car got stuck in the snow. I revved it a little too hard and broke the transfer case. The second day, a customer lent me his truck to rescue my car and clear the snow, but his truck also got stuck on the same property. Then after a few days clearing the snow and everything, the CNC movers had to come in to move the machine and equipment, and they also got stuck in the middle of the property and just literally left the machine in the snow in the middle of the property that we still have to get out of the way and move it into the shed. So it's been a bit of a problematic move, and the property still does need quite a lot of work. We need to construct a whole 700-foot asphalt road that trucks and stuff can drive on to get to the shop. Also, the reason I did buy such a big property was because I was planning to build a go-karting track and a few other like recreational things on the side, which I will also later get into. I'm really trying to get it done by this summer, but I really will have to see if all that construction and stuff is possible in that little time that we will have. Right now the weather is a little too bad. Next video I will actually go there and show you guys the property. Also talking about some future projects. A lot of people were asking about the F1 project and stuff, why there weren't any updates on that. So I guess the problem with the F1 car was things were going fairly well up until we got to the nose section of the car. Like F1 cars have this little section where the front suspension and the pedal box and steering rack and all that stuff goes, and it's actually super difficult packaging all that in a super like narrow nose section. And once we got to that part of the design, we had a lot of problems, like designing a custom steering rack first, and then a custom pedal box, then the suspension pickup points, and then we were actually using a tube steel chassis rather than a carbon fiber chassis. So fitting in all that was just almost working out to be impossible. So basically, long story short, on the side I was working on another concept, a successor to the E55 ASL project, which had a different front end, mainly based on everything we learned from the E55 ASL. Because the front end of that was working out so much easier, we decided to actually merge the two projects together, use the back end of the F1 car, which was already looking fairly good, and take the front end from the E55 ASL. And merging the two together, we ended up with this car that I ended up calling the XF2, because it's a two-seater. But in terms of the components and how everything works, it's actually a much easier design to implement, and aerodynamically we might actually be able to get better results than the F1 car, just because we have more covered area, a bigger floor, so we might be able to get more downforce than what we were getting with that car. So yeah, these are still the really initial renders. The design will change from here depending on whatever suits the aerodynamics better. So yes, in the next video I will give you guys an update on how all the other projects are doing, and also show you guys the next property and everything. So that's going to be everything for now. Thanks a lot for watching. Apologize for the really long pause in between videos and stuff, but still not fully out of the woods yet, but just a little bit more work to go before we can get back to work. So yeah, that's going to be everything for now. See you guys in the next one.